What if I told you that Max Verstappen is actually considering leaving Red Bull Racing? We're not talking about unfounded speculation. There are concrete talks happening away from the spotlight, confirmed meetings with Mercedes, public statements, and even Toto Wolff openly acknowledging his interest in the four-time world champion. However, the narrative becomes even more fascinating when you understand the real reasons that may be motivating all this movement. When you fully assimilate the details I am about to present, you will realize that this eventual team change may be much more concrete than anyone imagines. Let's start with the basic facts. Max Verstappen has a contract with Red Bull Racing that is valid until 2028. It seems like a stable situation, right? But that is exactly where the mistake lies. In recent months, Red Bull Racing has faced a deterioration in performance that has surprised everyone. The car that dominated in 2023 is currently struggling to remain competitive against McLaren and Ferrari. When a four-time world champion like Verstappen begins to see his title chances at risk, the situation can change dramatically. The contrast in performance between the current Red Bull Racing team and the one that won 19 of the 22 races in 2023 is evident. Max, previously accustomed to winning pole position and managing the race, now has to fight hard for every podium finish. The real surprise came when Toto Wolff, Mercedes' team principal, officially admitted to having held talks with Verstappen. The executive did not deny it, did not dodge the question, and confirmed it directly. In addition, after the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, the two met in person in Sardinia. This was not an informal conversation between drivers, but an organized meeting, away from the spotlight, in a private setting. What kind of discussion do two professionals of this magnitude have on an Italian island? They certainly weren't discussing weather conditions. The intriguing aspect is that Wolff did not try to hide this meeting when approached by the specialized media. On the contrary, he was transparent about the conversations, which may suggest that there is indeed something substantial being negotiated. When Red Bull Racing consultant Helmut Marko was asked about this meeting, his response was enlightening. He stated that Max is free to meet with anyone. Does this seem unconcerned? Possibly, but it could also represent the reaction of someone who recognizes that they do not have much power to interfere. Marko also emphasized that they have a valid contract and that they assume Max will stay. Assume? This word is revealing, because when you are sure, you don't assume, you declare. The body language and words chosen by Red Bull Racing officials suggest genuine concern, even if they do not acknowledge it publicly. On the Mercedes side, Wolff clarified that he is satisfied with the duo of George Russell and Andrea Kimi Antonelli for the near future. However, there is a however. He mentioned that when there is a four-time world champion who may be available on the market, any team leader needs to monitor the situation. This sentence is key. You can't predict what will happen in 3 or 5 years, so you have to consider what needs to be analyzed in the long term. Wolff is known for being a long-term planner, and these words were not spoken casually. He is clearly investigating the scenario, testing the market's reaction, and, above all, keeping the possibilities open for future negotiations. Now comes the part that may shed light on all this movement. There is consistent speculation that Christian Horner's departure as CEO and team principal of Red Bull Racing may have been influenced by Verstappen himself and his team, including his father Jos. When asked if he had spoken to Max after Horner's departure, Marko was blunt. Max has been informed. I prefer not to comment further on that. A revealing silence. Don't you agree? Jos Verstappen has always had a complex relationship with Horner, and if there was internal pressure for structural changes at Red Bull Racing, this may have created an environment of instability that Max does not value. Think about the situation. Verstappen has been with Red Bull Racing since 2016, has had a successful career there, and has won 4 consecutive world titles. However, if the team is losing competitiveness, if there are changes in the structure that he disapproves of, if the internal environment is no longer to his liking, why should he stay just because of a contract? Contracts in Formula One can contain performance clauses, can be renegotiated, can be terminated. Max has already shown that he is not afraid to make complex decisions in his career. Remember that he left Toro Rosso for Red Bull Racing at a very young age, always prioritizing his growth as a driver above any other consideration. Mercedes, on the other hand, symbolizes a unique opportunity. It is a team that has proven itself capable of developing dominant single-seaters, has unlimited resources, excellent infrastructure, and above all, total ambition to return to the top. Lewis Hamilton recently left for Ferrari, making room for a new big name. What name could be more significant than Max Verstappen? Mercedes has a history of 8 consecutive constructors' titles between 2014 and 2021. They understand how to develop winning cars and have the technical structure to return to dominance. Imagine the Russell and Verstappen lineup at Mercedes. George Russell, who has already proven himself to be extremely fast and consistent, alongside the current best driver on the grid. It would be an impressive combination, capable of competing for both drivers' and constructors' titles for years to come. For Verstappen, it would represent an opportunity to demonstrate that his ability transcends Red Bull Racing, to win titles with a second team, something that only the truly legendary can achieve. Russell, meanwhile, would have the chance to learn from one of the greatest talents in the recent history of the sport. But what about Red Bull Racing? It would lose not only its best driver, but also its main technical and commercial reference point. Max is not just a fast driver, he is the image of the Red Bull brand in Formula One. His marketing contracts are worth a fortune, and his presence guarantees a global audience, sponsors, and media relevance. Losing Verstappen would be a huge financial and sporting blow. The company has invested millions in Max's career since his karting days, and seeing him leave for a direct competitor would be a devastating blow to the brand's long-term plans. The timing is also ideal for such a transformation. The 2025 season is still in its infancy, teams are defining strategies for the coming years, and the driver market always becomes more dynamic when there is uncertainty about future regulations. If Verstappen really wants to leave, this is the perfect time to negotiate. The upcoming regulatory changes could completely alter the competitive order, and selecting the right team now could determine the next world titles. Now, let's be practical. The chances of this happening are still slim, as Wolff himself acknowledged. Contracts are contracts. Red Bull Racing has a lot of financial power to keep its biggest asset, and Verstappen may simply be using these talks as leverage for internal improvements at his current team. However, the fact that these talks are happening publicly is already an indication that something is not completely harmonious in the relationship between Max and Red Bull Racing. When a driver of Verstappen's caliber allows speculation of this nature to gain traction, it is because there are genuine reasons for dissatisfaction. Here's the takeaway. In Formula One, loyalty matters, but results are everything. If Red Bull Racing can't deliver a competitive car, if the internal environment remains turbulent, if other teams offer better conditions, even the most loyal driver in the world will reconsider his choices. Verstappen did not achieve his position by being sentimental, he achieved it by being strategic. If he realizes that his potential is being underutilized or that other opportunities may be superior, he will not hesitate to make the necessary change to stay at the top. What do you think? Should Verstappen stay at Red Bull Racing and try to rebuild the team's dominance, or would it be smart to jump ship while he is still the most coveted driver on the grid? Leave your opinion in the comments, share the video if you think this transfer could really happen, and subscribe to the channel because in the coming days we will have much more analysis on the behind the scenes of Formula One that you won't want to miss.